All right, I know many of you at home are very passionate about federal spending. I know I am too. We're done with all the pork and we want our government to crunch down because we're in debt. And it's a very serious issue. Elon Musk, who's supposed to be the head of Doge, telling the media that he actually might not reach that $2 trillion federal budget goal that he originally set. Now, he claims that was the high. He says that was the best they could probably do. He doesn't think they're going to come too close to it, but he's going to try his best, is what he's talking about now, which is deeply concerning because we want all of it cut. And so I got to say, we're going to aim for that 2 trillion because this country's in debt and we got a lot of paying off to do. Joining me to discuss, there's a brand new poll out that reflects how Americans feel about all of this, is Rasmussen Reports Mark Mitchell joining us. Mark also does a great channel over at YouTube. You got to check it out, Rasmussen Reports. Give them a follow if you're on YouTube. Mark, and you're also on Rumble too, I should say. Mark, thanks for jumping on with me today because you guys did a great poll in regards to spending, and I want to get to that. You guys asked about federal spending and Mike Johnson, whether or not he's going to do a good job at all of this. And 61% of voters approve of cutting back the size of the federal government to reduce spending, if I have that correct. So tell us about this latest poll, because I think it's interesting. Most Americans do want these things to be rolled back.
Yeah, there's been this myth for a really long time in American politics. The Democrats are the big government party and the Republicans are small government. And to be honest with you, over the economy's gotten so bad that really like everybody is now. I mean, Democrats do disapprove of cutting the government, but it's only like 48% to 43%. Republicans are overwhelmingly in favor of it, 82%, and even independents. 60% of independents approve of it and only 26% disapprove. So everybody's really looking around and saying, not only is my personal finances unsustainable, but the direction of the government is. And that's the theme of this. And I think voters also kind of acknowledge that it's a tough road to hoe because only 12% of voters say it's very likely that Congress is actually going to cut back the size and scope of the government. So I guess we're really going to see as Trump comes in. And quite honestly, I never personally thought Doge was the big part of this. I think restructuring the economy in a way that brings back the middle class is the biggest upside of Trump. I think we do need to grow our way out of this problem because government debt, and I love this topic because I actually got my MBA and came out of private sector. The government's been growing debt for a really long time. The problem is that starting back in the late 2000s, medium income in the country just stopped. It stagnated. So the problem is that to get back to just where we were, 12, 15 years ago, the median income in this country would have to be like 3 times bigger than it was back then. And it just hasn't kept pace. And that's because we're in a populist uprising because there's been unparalleled wealth inequality over the last, 10, 20 years. Ain't Republican, ain't Democrat. It's the uniparty kleptocracy, and that's why people approve of cutting the government. Like, what else can they do? They're saying no, no mas. It's too much.
Yeah, and 44% consider it likely that the Congress will actually cut the size of the government. So I don't know, that sounds like they're not very optimistic at any of these fronts. I think it's interesting though, Mark, because again, I mean, a lot of people were on board with Doge, and I don't know. Do you think that they sound confident that both, like you just said, because he's brought on some great people, like Peter Navarro is bringing back too, I must note. So he's bringing on good people who will help him build a stronger economy. But do you think with all of those elements that the American people are going to be very confident that he can get the job done?
Uh, Very hard to put your finger exactly on what question to ask to capture the sentiment on
Yeah.
this. And the one that pops into my mind is the question that we asked back in the fall, which is, do you trust the federal government? And roughly a quarter to 30% say yes. Everybody else says basically no. So that's who the real referendum was against, is the federal government. And this says, okay, well, people aren't too confident that Congress will actually be able to cut back the size and scope of the government. 12% very likely, 32% somewhat, but a plurality say not likely, 49%. But they want it done because they don't trust the government. They hate it. And so
Yeah.
I think people look at Elon, and I think the whole Doge idea is very popular because of what he did with Twitter, which is cut 80% of it, fire all the wokesters, put them out on the street, get rid of the ideological aspects of it, and change the way it operates, which should be a for-profit enterprise with very transparent, policies surrounding censorship. And we'll see if, I mean, that's the way the wind is blowing because the famous weather vane Mark Zuckerberg is doing the right thing. But what he doesn't understand is it all comes down to execution. And I think voters, Americans, absolutely understand that, which is why Twitter is rapidly growing, and I don't think Facebook will.
Yeah, and the interesting part too is like, Mark, I remember like 2 years ago we were talking about Zuckerbucks, and so to hear that we've gone from the Zuckerbuck discussion to free speech and him being an advocate for free speech is mind blowing. We actually had Mike Benz on the other day, and I asked Mike because obviously he's like this big, he knows all things related to free speech and censorship, whether or not he believes Zuckerberg, and he said, yeah, he's been actually trying to push for free speech and has been getting pressured by the government, and so Mike Benz actually thinks that this is authentic. I thought it was just maybe a political move. I know. That's I made the same face too. And he told me, but he's 100% behind it. And he's like, Breanna,
Yeah.
I've been watching this guy for years now. I think he's on board with getting rid of censorship. So I mean, we'll see. I don't really have my hopes up too high,
Yeah.
but
I'll
Mike
have to
Benz is
look at
all
that
in on that.
segment. Yeah, that's the worst Mike Benz take I ever heard, but maybe he's right. I don't know. Like, I love him. I think he's right. Apparently now,
Yeah.
only 99.9% of the time, Rasmussen reports still has a shadow ban, and people say no, like nobody goes to Facebook anymore. And yeah, we've been putting out posts for 3 or 4 years now, solid, 1 to 2 a day, and we haven't picked up any followers. And it kind of coincides with around the time we started talking about election integrity and COVID vaccine safety. So I definitely think there's still stuff going on. But looking at what he said, I mean, he says, okay, we're going to use a community notes system instead of fact
Mhm.
checkers. Well, fact checkers or community notes could both be effective or not effective if you have it set up where it can be gamed just like every other system has been, like the Reddit moderators, like the Wikipedia moderators. And also, he says, oh, we're going to move the team from California to Austin. Well, what if you move it from a deep red part of California to like exactly Austin, like the heart of
Yeah.
lefty Texas? Like it is possible to screw that up. And I don't know. I guess we'll see. So many people use Facebook. It probably is much more influential than we give it credit for.
I
So
know. I'm
yeah,
not on
color
it.
me
I'm done.
skeptical.
Yeah, well, you're not alone. You're not alone. And I, at this point, want to nuke my Instagram as well. Everything I post, Mark, gets flagged for election fraud or and it's not. I'm not even talking about anything related to the election. So I'm just over it altogether. But I wanted to ask you another question because I just had Joe Pags on the program, and with Joe, we were talking about the California fires that are going on right now, and it's interesting because you guys over at Rasmussen reports did a poll back in 2020 about whether or not Americans believe this is all related to climate change. I think that's really important because we're seeing those on the left try to pretend like it is climate change that's related to all these wildfires, but are Americans really buying it?
Well, this is one of the big ones I'm watching because I think the Overton window is going to shift on this, and it hasn't yet. So these numbers are from 2020, but a heck of a lot has happened since then. A lot of trust has been lost in institutions. People didn't even really know what was going on with COVID when we asked these questions. But at the time, 41% said that the most likely reason for the wildfires in California is climate change. 54% said a variety of other natural and human factors. And for Democrats, it was 64% who said climate change. But what it's turning into, it's like morphing into this blanket excuse for Democrat failures.
Mhm.
And because of the shift in the media landscape, just in the last 4 years, really just in the last 1 year, I think on a lot of things like this, on reparations, on abortion, on all these things that the Overton window moved massively left, I think we're going to see blowback. And I guess we'll have to maybe come back on, but the numbers should be out sometime next week about what they are now. I don't think Americans are going to buy climate change as much anymore. And quite frankly, their economic situation, I think this is a luxury belief. And now they're worried about burning their houses burning down, not being able to get insurance, and then the government pissing on them and telling them it's raining. Like that's what this is. So,
Yeah.
uh, yeah,
Yeah. No,
horrifying.
no. 1,000%. And that's the point of all of this. I mean, President Trump has been warning Newsom to handle the forest management in his state, and he's just decided not to do so. And that's why I know a lot of people are like, oh, it's incompetency. I don't think it's incompetency anymore. I think it's to push this climate change agenda that they have because they need the numbers. Sadly, they need the devastation. They need those images so they could do just that. So at this point, And I don't think the fires are random. This is me. This is me putting on my tinfoil hat. I don't think they're random. I think it's very obvious yesterday when I sat here and saw the Fox Live shot of the chopper where that random fire started in Hollywood. It just seems at this point that these fires are starting, and I'm just have to assume at this point that it's arson because it's happened before in the past. It's not that crazy of an idea, Mark. But if you want to put on your tinfoil hat and react to that, you can.
No, no. This my second favorite public opinion tool is Google
Yeah.
Trends. And right now, believe it or not, in this country, searches for the term eco-terrorism just in the last day are outstripping searches for global warming. So searches for the term arson in California are massively increasing over searches for the term climate change. So I do think you're not alone. I think there's a healthy skepticism of where these fires are coming from. And again, hopefully the polling numbers bear it out. But I mean, like, I think that everybody knows, like California arson searches through the roof. They're probably looking for video, and it's probably going to come out, and that's probably what we're going to see in 2 or 3 days on Twitter is all these videos of people lighting these fires. I can't wait for it.
Yeah, there was one that I saw, but I couldn't confirm it myself, so I wouldn't even air it. But yeah, no, I think that's the case. And I honestly have had enough of this, and I feel horrible for the people that lost their homes. But we got to wake up. We got to realize that this is not accidental, and that these things are both government failures and possibly crimes being committed. And so we have to keep our minds open to all of that. Mark Mitchell, I want to thank you as always for jumping on today. For all of you at home right now listening, you got to head over to his YouTube Rumble page, give him a follow. It's Rasmussen Reports. We've got that link for you as well. Mark, as always, we'll see you here next time. And let me know when you get that poll in, because I would love to compare both 2020 and 2025, because I think
Yeah,
Americans
send it
have
to you right
changed.
away. Yep.
Thank you. I appreciate it. If you enjoyed that segment, make sure you're subscribing to this show because we're a podcast as well, available on all of your favorite podcasting platforms like Spotify, Apple, Amazon, and so many more. So give us a follow there and leave us some feedback. I love seeing your comments, and I love a good 5-star review. We greatly appreciate it when you do just that.